PBS Kids show on outer space. We move now to two leading figures in the cutting-edge exploration of inner space, the great frontier of the genome. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Jarvis, and I'm back with you again to address the importance of STEAM subjects to young students. And here with me now are Dr. Neil Lamb, Vice President for Educational Outreach, and his colleague, Dr. Elizabeth Worthy. She's the Director of Informatics, both from the HudsonAlpha Institute of Biotechnology in Huntsville, Alabama. And we thank you so much for being with us. And I want to start with you, Dr. Lamb. Tell us about what the HudsonAlpha Institute is and what you're doing.
HudsonAlpha is this really unique blend of world-class genomic researchers studying the impact of our DNA instructions on humans, on animals, on other organisms. And in the same space, you have this unique mix of multiple biotechnology companies. So you take the science that's being done by the researchers, and you have a way to actually turn it into applications that improve life. And then in the same space, there's a clinic that we're opening that's actually helping treat and diagnose unidentified diseases, and an education program that creates a more genetically literate society and builds the future workforce for the field of biotech and genetics.
So not any really significant objectives with
Just
what you're trying to do. Just, yeah, exactly. Everyday stuff. No, you're doing huge things. And a core of that, as you just said, is education. And in particular, targeting education towards children and helping children to see all of these very complex things, but see their application in everyday life.
That's right. If we can find ways to take what is often a dry or really complicated subject and put it in everyday language and make it relevant and engaging, we can find ways to talk about how genetics impacts whether you can taste broccoli in a way that you like or not, or why does drinking a soda or coffee make you jittery. If we can tie it back to everyday life and tell exciting stories, kids understand why they need to know this, but also it opens up a whole set of career fields to say, ooh, I like that. Let me learn more about that. I'd like to go into that field.
Dr. Worthy, you're a scientist. What inspired you to become a scientist in the early stages?
You know, there were many different things that happened to me as a child. So I had a great science teacher who everybody thought was a little crazy, but he was really good at engaging the kids. It made it interesting and fun. We all looked forward to his class. I also used to love, on TV back home in Scotland, they used to have Christmas lectures. And these were lectures by prominent scientists, but they were targeted towards kids. Again, really hands-on and fun. And then I also got to go and visit the local university when I was a kid and do DNA prep from a piece of fruit, from a banana. And, you know, all of those things together really kept me being a scientist. So I think all children are scientists, and some people fall away and find other loves, and I was always a scientist, and those kept me engaged.
It's all about keeping kids engaged, keeping that initial spark of interest, and great teachers can do that. Great educational programs can do that. We were talking a moment ago when you said your 4-year-old daughter says that she's a scientist, which applies because all kids are.
Yeah, and she says, I'm a scientist, all children are. It's all about trying to learn every day and work out how things work. That's what she tells me, and it makes me very proud.
Dr. Lamb, tell us about some of the programs that you're working on to help kids see the interest in all of these topics.
We have a whole host of activities that we've put together, from hands-on experiences in a classroom that tie what's going on in the textbook or in what the state says you have to cover about science. We run a whole series of middle school camps. One of them is called I Want to Wear a Lab Coat, that is about careers in the field that they can begin to think about as they get older. We have short courses in the summer that talk about specific topics like synthetic biology. We run summer intern programs. And then we try to find ways to engage kids with digital media. We have an app that's been downloaded. It's free 1.4 million times. It's called iCell, and it's all about the inner workings of the cell. And we've just created an entire experience about how do you help keep a crew healthy on a 20-year mission to a moon of Neptune. The game's called Touching Triton, and it's all about how do you take real-world genetic data and try to determine what risks of disease are and solve those problems to keep people healthy for the next 20 years.
And we've heard the data before. This country is unfortunately falling behind, significantly behind in a lot of these jobs. And unfortunately, women and young women are disproportionately involved in this space. And you yourself have probably seen that throughout your career and even in classroom experiences.
I have. So back when I was still in the Scottish equivalent of high school, I was told that I probably shouldn't take all three sciences, physics, chemistry, and biology together.
You were told that?
I was, and it turned out from talking to other people in my class that none of the boys that were wanting to do it had been told the same thing. So that was kind of an early experience. I ignored it. I took them all anyway.
What made you do that? I always wonder about this because when you see the stories, the women who persevered in spite of their surroundings, I always wonder, what was it? Was it your parents? Was it a teacher?
I think a lot of it was the experiences growing up that led to a belief in me that I could do things. It's a question I've asked myself as I have children now, and I try and work out how do I instill that in them? How can I make them truly believe that they can do whatever they want to? It's something that I'm working on.
And what do you find is the most effective tool for that?
I think it's both the positive encouragement, but I think, and Neil and I were talking about this on the drive to here, that some of it is letting them go and try things. Let them try things, for them learn how to fail, but also learn how to succeed. And even since then, during my training, I also had many other times where people told me that I couldn't do it because I was a woman, but I did it, and women can.
And here you are, sharing that message with so many, and here's HudsonAlpha doing exactly that as well, helping train the next generation of Dr. Worthies. I wonder also about the genome, and it hasn't been all that long since we first mapped the genome. What do you see as the biggest scientific achievement since that point?
So I think the access to the information in the genome is going to fundamentally change healthcare, and it's going to change healthcare in the US and around the world. There's a lot of information that can be used by the medical teams in the genome, and so I think this is one of the big developments.
How about you, Dr. Lamb?
I would agree. I think the access to the information, one of the challenges is the sequencing of the human genome gave us the first read, but we all vary in a relatively small number of ways, but we vary. So we have to figure out how much do we vary, and when we find differences, is that just part of the beautiful variation that we find in humanity, or is that something that is clinically or biologically relevant? And we're at this stage now where this is really similar to putting together a 1,000-piece puzzle. And if you can imagine, we have the puzzle on the floor in front of us, and I've actually only given you 200 pieces. And I've said, okay, what does the puzzle actually look like finished? I haven't given you enough pieces. And researchers like Dr. Worthy and researchers at HudsonAlpha and around the world are putting more pieces on the floor, so then we can truly make a difference in understanding what that means for human health and for the environment and for food supply and all those other things.
And to any young person in particular who is hearing about this puzzle, who wants to be a part of it, who wants to solve it, put a piece on the table. You're here. There are others like you, Dr. Worthy, Dr. Lamb, who are out there. Find the teacher if you don't have one. I think that's the reality now, that it partially comes down to the student, but it also comes down to organizations like HudsonAlpha to make it happen. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Well, it's hard to imagine a career opportunity much more challenging and exciting than that, really, for anyone, and we thank both of you for being with us. Here's wishing all the best to your future research and educational research.